major is fine arts? One? Oh, not that many. So how did you become interested in this course? If your major, so what is everyone else's background? Like?
Same as you.
Oh, so you've graduated? Oh, okay. So thank you for coming back. And what else? Like for people who are still studying, what are you studying?
Creative industries.
Creative industries. Oh yeah, this wasn't there. It didn't exist while we were here.
Yeah, it's a new subject.
Okay, any more aside creative industry? Anything that's completely irrelevant to the arts normally? Humanities. Oh, they have changes. Okay, so I'm very confused by how subjects are organized nowadays. But anyway, I hope you could. This might be something you have already heard of, or something you have completely not heard of. So just feel free to let me know what you feel. So to start with, I want to start with a question. As in, what do you think are the criteria of good art, if good art does exist? What do you think as good art and crappy art, for example? Like anything that is in your perception. Right, so you have good art. And then, maybe not crappy art. Let's just do good art, and anything else will fall into the not super good, right? So what are the criteria, or what would personally kind of touch you or critically make you think that, okay, even if I don't like it, it's probably good art?
I think it's something original.
Okay,
the
it's
artist
original.
is communicating a message.
Okay, it's original. It's communicative. What else? Yeah.
Timeless.
It's timeless. Anything else?
I think it needs to be thought-provoking, and for contemporary art, I think it may need to challenge some of the social norms or practices,
Okay.
kind of avant-garde of the arts.
Okay. Awesome. And where do these perceptions come from? Like, why do you think that good art has to be that?
Well, they're shown in museums or galleries.
So you're saying that things that go into museum and galleries are kind of in a safety net, is a better art. It's okay to think that.
Yeah.
Okay. So museums and galleries. What else? Like, who told you that timeless art is good art? Who told you that thought-provoking art is good art? What if I do like a really mellow kind of art agreeing with how the society currently is? Is it then good art?
I think sometimes the comments or sharing from an experienced artist, their views on how they look at the artwork, that actually shaped my views on good artwork as well.
Okay, so you think that the artists directly communicate with you?
Or someone doing the art education, and
Okay.
they review previous great artists. That could be a source of insight as well.
So art education and reviews. Anything else?
From the academy and critics.
Critics?
I think the term art itself is very elusive. You cannot define what art is, and you actually cannot, because you cannot define what art is, you cannot define what good art is and what bad art is.
Excellent. We are going into like a very philosophical realm, which is unfortunately always the case of art. Which is very true. Like, a lot of things that I say today would be very closely related to the kind of fluid nature of art. Because if you think about it, a lot of things that are kind of not acceptable in society would be okay in art. In fact, if you are always respecting how society runs, according to your criteria, which it has to be provoking or like anti-social norms, it's not going to be good art. So then it becomes a very gray area on how we look at art and why we think good art has to be these, right? And thank you for all of you who come up with these, because if you look at it, you're not directly talking to the art piece. We always get reference from the arts from someone else telling us what it is, right? Because art education is by textbook, and textbook is written by academics or critics. Art reviews are written by critics, a lot of things are written by critics, right? So, an interesting norm in the art world is that words play a very important role. But if you ever meet a lot of artists, you'll find that a lot of them are not very good at writing. A lot of them actually don't prefer writing. And because in my daily job involves organizing a lot of media interview for the artists. Artists normally do not like answering the question, what is your art about? They'll be like, oh, it's not fair if it comes from me, it has to come from the audience. And then the journalist will be like, oh, but you must have thought about something. If you do not know, maybe I can maybe you have thought about this. Do you think I'm right? The answer is a bit sort of right. It's like, on that premise, I'm going to ask my next question. So you see, what you see as a piece of review or what you see as a piece of report has been kind of filtered by a lot of people. It's not, I won't say it's good or it's bad, it's how kind of the scale of things is working, right? In the whole system, you need critics. And critics somehow develop their view on arts by interviewing the artists who cannot articulate themselves very well or do not prefer articulate themselves very well. So then we have to question, first of all, what goes into critics? What power is consciously or not consciously trying to shape the critics, right? And therefore shaping what you think. And eventually, it shapes how art is. Because you will see that as an artist, as hard as you try not to create something that pleases people, it's very hard. Because pleases people or institution, right? So, let's set this question aside for a bit. How aware are you of the role of money in art? How many of you directly associate art with money? You think that it's no problem. You have always accepted the fact that money is part of art. In what ways?
Because at least at this first time, for example, if you're an artist, you want to paint a painting, you need to buy the material, and that needs money.
Okay. So this is a very humble way of money. You have money, and then you have materials.
Then you have to sell your art in order to survive.
Okay, survival. And your opinion?
Same studio, painting, ink, and all kinds of stuff.
So basically necessity cost, right?
Yep.
Well, I would say it's closely linked to art, but it's not part of art. But because you asked if we think it's part of art.
Okay, it's closely linked, but it's still two things. So there's an idea of pure art.
Not pure.
No, so there's an idea of art,
Yeah.
which somehow does
Closely linked.
not involve money.
Yeah.
Not necessarily involving money.
Yeah, I agree to that. Some people can have a profession for making a living, but they can still do arts.
Yes. Okay. So I will first of all have to clarify one thing, because I was trying to put art back into the industry, to look at it as an industry, because how the industry talks about art kind of shapes how we think about art a lot. So I agree that you can do art for leisure and you can do it on the side, but the reason why I asked this question is because there obviously are certain monetary trading transactions. Okay, but in addition to material survival studio, what are other areas of art or other things that you hear from the news about money and art?
I think there's some
Auctions. Sorry?
there's some kind of rankings depends on the values of the art piece.
Mm-hmm. So you have auctions, rankings. And did anyone pay attention to the news today on the new auction result from Poly Auction? So Poly Auction basically sold a piece today called Zhou Zhang in Chinese. It sold for 2 billion.
The music
No,
painting,
yeah.
Chinese painting.
Yes, so 2 billion for a piece of, I think it's Ngugunzhong,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So Ngugunzhong, just to give you a bit of background, is a modern Chinese artist. So I think post-war Chinese artist. Post-war Chinese artists have been doing really well at auctions since I think 10 years ago. So prices have been going up by folds. It has I think risen by at least 10 times. So recently it has hit 2 billion, which is the most expensive Chinese paintings. And so obviously, auctions play like a huge role in how money affects the art. All right. Given these, how many of you would associate money with bad things? Like, how many of you think that money kind of contaminate the art?
I think there are, when you talk about contamination, there are issues at the auction where not the original painting, the fake paintings come up into
Yes.
the market. That could be an issue as well.
Yes, so there are fake paintings. True. And back to the money issue, how many of you think that, how many of you are uncomfortable with the idea of money closely associating with art? Like say if you're an artist, I don't know, some of you might have like painting backgrounds, and I personally know artists who are very sensitive to such issues. They'll be like, we create art, yes we sell it for money, but it's not the primary, the thing that we hear the most is that we do it for a living, but we do not, it's not a primary drive. The primary drive is still creativity, right? So I just want to, by a quick show of hand, how many of you share that uncomfortableness? Okay, so if I tell you, if I go like, boom, your art is about money, you will feel like, no, it's not, right? You feel the need to defend, right? Okay, so given all that, we're going to go into a bit of history, go into a bit of time, a bit of narratives. So your narrative, history, and money. Alright, so I was trying to look through a lot of readings, and I tried to summarize the art narrative, as in how we look at art, into two key factors, right? One is history, the other is money. And you'll be surprised how closely art history mirrors the actual history, as in how we look at things. So remember all the lists you just came up with, right? It has to be timeless, it has to be thought-provoking, etc., etc. But back in the like oldest days, I'm talking about Western history, right? Western art history and perspective. Back in the days of Plato, the way they look at art, or the way they critique art, is that art is a mirror. And to measure whether or not art is a good thing, we measure by how closely it can imitate something. The reason is, in Plato's time, they believe that there is a perfect world. You have heard of the term utopia, right? So utopia is God's world. And then everything else, our world, is a mirror to God's world. So the chair you're sitting on is a mirror to the perfect chair in God's heaven, or not, maybe not heaven, but their world. And what is art? Art is an imitation of the imperfect chair you are sitting on. So you see there is perfect, there is imperfect, and then there's a mirror of the imperfect. Right? So needless to say, art in their time wasn't something very highly. It has always been, by the nature of it, something that is down below. Because you are just trying to imitate a very imperfect world, right? And this is how critics look at art at that time. That's why when you say that we look at critics, a lot of times you look at modern critics. But then back in those days, they'll be like, yeah, we look at critics too, and this is what critics told us. And then as Plato's site slowly evolves, it went into Aristotle's time. It's fine. So Aristotle basically believed the same as Plato, but he tried to take it a step kind of forward. Rather than imitating the imperfect chair you're sitting on, he kind of stepped back and focused on observing the world. So observing how you interact with certain people, and then that's how different kind of art forms came about. So you have tragedy, you have comedy, you have like different kinds of drama. If you think about it, it's just traits of human beings. Tragedy is fate, right? By definition, tragedy is even if you try, you're going to fail. Comedy is basically you fight and go through a lot of conflicts, and then eventually it turns out okay, right? This is by observation, Aristotle's observation to people, and it's kind of generalized. A lot of times when we look back to literature works by people at Aristotle's time, we feel that it's kind of simplified because there is a progression and there is like a formula of how things work. But at that time, still, the whole thing is about mirroring. And the interesting thing is they justify that by saying that, you know what, the thing that human being enjoys most is mirroring. So if art can mirror anything, even if it's not highly, even if it doesn't provoke you to be a better person, it's fine because that's what it has to be. Right, so history continued to evolve, and then it has evolved into something called the pragmatics. So the pragmatics, as Chinese, like most of us, will be kind of familiar with that. In Chinese, it's 文以載道. It's telling you that good art is art that teaches you. So as long as it teaches you something, good art has to do two things. It has to please you, and it has to teach you. So it means that if you have an art that is extremely boring, and if it's trying to indoctrinate you with something good, it's not good art because it's boring. But if you have an art that is only interesting, but it doesn't teach you things, or it teaches you to be a bad person, it's also not good art. Art has to do two things simultaneously. So what happens with this is very clearly they have a concept of good and bad. And when you have a concept of good and bad, a lot of time things are institutionalized and things are not that open to debate. Because think about it, you first have to have a set of good and bad metrics, then you can critique on it and say that, oh, this piece of art is good and bad because according to that metrics. So in this period of time, art is still not about personality, it's not about debate, it's about social goods. And then there was this interesting critic, whose name I forgot, since I'm very bad with names, but he was trying to critique Shakespeare. He was like, Shakespeare is an awesome author, reason being, he always tried to teach. He always, like comedies always end with the fool coming out doing a joke and telling you that, oh, life is really short, love is also really short, we should just not believe in it, right? Those are life lessons. And the good thing about Shakespeare is that if you're familiar with literature, he kind of modernized English, right? Before Shakespeare, things would be more incomprehensible, like looking from our perspective nowadays. But at his time, he kind of coined more than 700 words to kind of modernize English. And the Globe originally was open to the public. And it was where people just come in and stand and look at it. So at his time, Shakespeare's theater is nothing royal, it's nothing very highly, it's for the common people. And the good thing is, he effectively speaks to the common people and teach them a lesson in a fun way. So if you apply this metrics, you can understand why at that time, critics will think that Shakespeare's work is great work. And nowadays, when you look back, not that many people say anymore that Shakespeare is good because it teaches people. We look at how Shakespeare maybe modernized language, maybe how he does, how he plays with stage design, how he references to history, but not very often do we talk about the teaching element anymore. And this is because history has progressed and art criticism has also progressed, right? So we have the pragmatics, and then we have the expressionists. How many of you are familiar with the poet William Wordsworth? So William Wordsworth is an English poet, and he belongs to Romanticism. His very famous poem is Upon Westminster Bridge. So basically, he went on a bridge in London in the morning, and I looked at London, feeling really blessed by God, and then he just exclaimed on the bridge. So that poem is essentially about him exclaiming to God how beautiful the world is. And at that time, at the expressionist time, this will be good art. Good art is about, in Wordsworth's words, a spontaneous overflow of feeling. So you just have to let your feeling burst. And then the more sincere you are, the better your works will be. Right? So if you compare these two periods, it's already a very huge change, because if Shakespeare has done the same, people will be like, you have no literary skills, you do not know how to polish your language, right? But at this point, that is less what people care about. So you see the artist is actually gaining a stronger and stronger, higher and higher status. I would say that it kind of peaked at this, because after Expressionists, we have, I think it's called the objectives. Objectives basically take the artwork as a body, a living body. It basically says that after the artwork is born or is created, it has a life on its own. So whenever you critique it, it's not about whether the poet has a lot of feeling, has a lot of emotion. It is about whether the work is self-contained. Self-contained is a very tricky word because, like, how do you tell whether a work is self-contained, right? But critics at this point tend to say, for instance, at this part of the drama, there should be more lighting because it would create better stage effect. Now, if you think about it, it's kind of weird because create better stage effect for what? In here, it will have to be create better stage effect in order to teach. Here, it will be create better stage effect in order to express yourself. Here, it would just be creating stage effect in order for it to look beautiful, full stop. Like, beautiful is now something that is okay. It's acceptable by art critics. So you see, the reason why I brought this up is because art narratives has never been stable. It has never been constant. It has always changed with how the bigger history is going or the bigger philosophy is going. And so when we look at critics nowadays, very clearly if someone comes out and tells you that this is a shitty piece of art because it doesn't teach you how to be a good person, you'd be like, this person is probably nuts. I'm not going to listen to these critics, right? But because we have gone that far, we are closer to probably this. We're a lot closer to individualistic thinking than the past, right? That is something to be aware of when you look at critics and think of whether or not they're good. Okay. Any questions up till now?
You mentioned the Plato one.
Yes.
And I was wondering, because at that time there was a lot of art there were a lot of art pieces about the gods, and you mentioned art is the imitation of imperfect stuff.
Mhm.
But the gods are
are perfect.
statues.
Yes, but the thing is, their perception is you can never know what God actually is. So the utopia is something that you would try for your life to get to, and you would never get there. And if you have a perception of God, it is your imagination. And because by nature you are a human being, you're never going to get there. It's just your imagination, and if art replicate your imagination, it is 2 stages below God. You see, it goes through you, and then it becomes itself. So even, it doesn't matter if it's trying to imitate God or imitate anything, because in Plato's world, everything is an imitation of God. But unfortunately, everything can only be an imitation of God, even if it's statues of God, it's statue of the divine, and stuff like that, right? So that is a part of art history. Now we can move into money. So you have auction houses. Now, to begin with money, I would like everyone to start throwing out actors in the art scene, right? So auction houses is one. What are the other actors or players in the industry? Okay, the government. Our beloved ADC. Government and the Arts Development Council. Oh, no, actually the LCSD. Right? We have Homanchu representing the government in the scene. We have auction houses. What else is in the private market? Galleries. Collectors. What else? The media. What else?
PR.
Yeah, which goes into the media. So you have the PRs and you have the writers. By the way, PRs are also writers. We write a lot of press releases, which is extremely boring and extremely misleading. And so there's the media, and what else? There are some that doesn't focus that much on money. Come on. Artists.
Public viewers.
Yeah?
Public viewers.
Viewers?
General public.
Okay, so that's public. Is this pen very hard to see from the back, or not really? It is?
Write a bit bigger.
Oh, sorry. Maybe I can get it better. This one better? Okay, I'll try to write bigger, okay? Hey, there should be at least one more that normally we don't think it's that associated with money.
Exhibition spaces.
Spaces artists can belong to a lot of people. I would say at least we are missing two kind of important players here.
Museum.
Okay, so 3. Museums.
Insurance.
So 4. Yeah, if you go look up AXA. If you are really interested in how art insurance work, go look up AXA because AXA is the biggest art insurance provider nowadays. Okay, thank you. What else? Hey, there should be stuff that doesn't focus that much on money. Huh? No, internet. I mean, art organizations.
Is it the artist society or?
Yeah.
Fine art department.
No. Anyone of you heard of Asia Art Archive?
Oh, yeah.
And what are they?
Archive.
NGO.
Yes, they're NGOs. Now, NGO is a very tricky. Oh, this one's much better. NGO is something that we need to talk about. And one more thing.
Art agency.
Art agencies are galleries.
What
I
about
think
the
patrons.
charitable organization like the Hong Kong Jockey Club involved in many of the art activities?
Okay, so you can call them kind of sponsors, right? So when you go, sponsors in my mind will include the corporate. Because fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of projects are nowadays funded by corporates, right? So everything I put on the board kind of have some relation to money. Whether or not they do not have money and constantly need to look for money, or they have a lot of money and constantly looking to put it into somewhere, or they constantly have a lot of artworks and want to change it into money, right? So now we have that many of stuff. Think about how their position, their relationship with money shape how they describe art. Because if you take the same piece of art and ask each of them, everyone would have a different way to describe it. And we're not always aware of it, right? So we'll take the easiest one. Take, for instance, the 2 billion painting sold by Poly Auction today. Now, all of you are Poly Auction. Give me a description of that piece of art. Brian, can you try to find that on the internet?
Oh yeah, sure.
Or we can actually wait till Brian finds that piece of painting, and then you Poly Auction people can tell me how Poly Auction is going to describe that piece of art, right? I don't have a stance here, because I'm not actually very rooted in art history and art appreciation. I just want to make you aware of how these things can affect how.
I think I mentioned the artist's name is so famous.
He's so famous.
And influential.
Okay.
A lot of people would just kind of.
So if you're the auction house, you would make sure the name is there. What else? If you're doing a catalog for this auction piece, right? What do you have to include so that people feel that they can invest, pay money for it?
Past auction history.
Yeah, okay, so past prices.
Previous collectors.
Yes, you guys are very good at this collection cycle thingy. Previous collectors. What else?
Some background on that piece of artwork.
So history, right? Now, so you can see how, unfortunately, what you do in school, what you study in art history, eventually also spurs the market. That's why sometimes I talk to art history students, and then they're like, oh, art history is really important, the market really screws us up. I was like, oh, wait. If you go out and look at the real world, unfortunately, what you study spurs the market, right? Because that's how people believe in things. It's like, historically, it's important. Okay, and galleries kind of tend to do the same, right? So we would say that galleries kind of also do the same. Now, a lot of times I come across a question from journalists who may not be very familiar with how the art world how art world operates. They will ask the question, how did you curate a gallery show? And a lot of times, we kind of find it a bit problematic because curation, if you study art history or the art industry, normally means that you design a show without consideration of the market. So in museums, they do curation because they're trying to curate a show that tells a story, because museums do not sell, theoretically, right? So that is curation. But this, you have to always remember that Hong Kong is super expensive. Where are the most expensive galleries? Where are most of the galleries in Hong Kong, like bigger ones? Have you ever been to Peta Building? No. Also, we will have an outing. We will have an outing on Saturday. I strongly encourage everyone to come because we'll walk past some of the institutions that we mentioned here. If you go to Peta Building, it's right in the heart of Central, with a lot of blue chip galleries. And if they have to pay the rent, they cannot afford to sell kids' work because they won't earn their money. They have to primarily make sure they can earn money for their business. So then curation becomes something very problematic because they cannot afford to risk a lot in curation. A lot of times, whatever they select to put inside the gallery is directed by the market, right? And then how galleries and the market interact is a very tricky story. We'll try to skip here. But that is galleries and auction houses. Oh, that is the piece, by the way. So if I were writing like a PR release for this, I would probably also comment on the brushstrokes and the way it evolves from the previous generation, because he belongs to a generation that studies a lot abroad, right? So you would often draw inspiration from this part of history. You would say that, oh, that is a period that Chinese and Western art kind of collaborate, and then it evolves and becomes something else. I'm not saying these are not history. I'm saying that when I write, I wasn't very aware if it's true. I would have a general impression that, I think it's kind of true. And a lot of times this is how it goes out to the public, right? I'll go into the media later and tell you why this particular practice is very detrimental to how the public understands the art. Right, okay, so there are these. And then we have museums. What do museums care about? And for the same piece of art, what does a museum care about that auction houses and galleries may not? What is the key difference between a museum buying a piece of art and a collector buying a piece of art?
I think the museum want more people, the general public, to have a chance to see that particular valuable piece.
Okay, so it speaks to the public. What else? There's a mechanism that makes sure the museum can actually do this. Say you are a museum, you bought a piece of art, and I'm a collector, I also bought a piece of art. What are the key differences? What are we allowed or not allowed to do?
Well, if I work with a museum, then I'll think about what other pieces I have. Then I can make a series of the show.
So it's a series, it's a curation, basically. So it has a lot more public interest in its mind, right? But back to my question. Comparing a collector and a museum buying a piece of art, what is the key difference monetary-wise?
I think the collector wants to increase the value, and hopefully it will compound growth in terms of the dollar value. While the museum might not be that critical or that cautious on from the monetary terms in terms of the future rise in the value of that particular piece.
So traditionally, thank you very much for that, because traditionally museums are not allowed to resell a piece of work. So it means that it's kind of like a black hole. You throw it in, it's going to stay there forever. And you're not going to make money for it because you're forbidden to. Versus if I'm a private collector, I would hang it on my wall for 2 years and, oh, the market is nice, I'm just going to sell it. Right? So art kind of becomes an investment. And art as an investment is a really, really hot topic in the past couple of years. A lot of my clients talk about it. Galleries talk about it a lot because journalists will be tempted to ask, oh, so how do you think, for instance, the Gutai market, you guys know Gutai? How many search Gutai? It's spelled Gutai. It's a modern Japanese art movement. that happens, I think, some of them are still not dead. So I think it happens like around 30 years ago. It's one of the avant-garde Japanese art movement. In Chinese, it's called 具體牌. So if you have paid attention to Sotheby's or to gallery shows, Gutai and like names like 白髮一雄 and 吉原治良, like the circle there, the founder of Gutai, has been extremely hot in the market. So say you are a gallery owner, right? You are being asked by a journalist, how would you predict the market of Gutai in 5 years? What do you say? You're currently holding a show on Gutai, and you're being asked by a journalist, how would you predict it in 5 years? Journalists will normally be like, oh, the general market is doing really bad this year. Do you think it will affect auction prices, or do you think it will affect gallery prices? So your official answer will be? No, right? It's almost like you're selling oranges. My mom always does that. You're selling oranges in the market. And then my mom comes and asks, oh, are your oranges sweet? Of course you say it's sweet. You're not going to say, it's really sour, just don't buy from me, right? So they have vested interest. Therefore, a lot of times when you look at it, when you look at art market from the perspective of people who sell, it's never going to work, because there will be stuff that they do not tell you. And of course, at the same time, they will try, it's like 政府搞事, or like whoever who wants to maintain their interest will try to maintain a strong market, because a weak market doesn't do them good, right? So as versus a museum prices is often a better indicator to how much a painting is worth. Because after they buy, they cannot sell. And unfortunately, this is no longer true. Like museums are starting to resell some of their pieces, which makes money laundering very easy. It just is something quite problematic in the scene. But again, okay, museums doesn't have the intention to do with the market. But you are this vicious auction, like let's just say they're bad guys, right? You're bad guys from auction houses. How are you going to make use of museums to drive the prices of the piece up? Or you're vicious PR like me, right? You heard that certain museums recently has got Gunzhong's other paintings. How are you going to make use of this fact?
It is highly appreciated by the museum, and it has a good reputation that is collected by many museums. So it's so the importance in the art history, or it is become more and more precious. It is going to be collected by the museum.
If you ever want a job in PR, you should talk to my company. You are very suited for the job. That is exactly what I'll do. Is you will try to, because the price of a piece, now given that art investment is such a huge thing nowadays, a lot of people got tired with stock market, they got tired with buildings, real estate, they come to art, and they know nothing about it. So all they know is I will look at authorities. We'll see what authorities collect, and I'll collect, and I'm safe. So that's why if museums collect, a lot of times it's a very good indicator to it is a safe investment. So I will collect whatever museums collect. Unfortunately, museums unwantingly spur the market by collecting what it thinks is academically important. So my next question becomes, why does museum have the power to decide what is good art? Right? Because if you think about it, we always talk about democracy and everything nowadays, right? That is kind of the general trend of where our thinking is going. But when it comes to art, we are still quite happy to believe in museums. We're still quite happy to believe in a couple of curators deciding what is important for us. And unfortunately, when you allow this decision, it a lot of times spurs the market. Well, again, I'm not saying it's good or it's bad, but it's a situation that we have to be aware of. Before we go, museums are the best, we need to believe museums as the authority of art. It actually does have connection with a lot of things. Oh, and by the way, a lot of museum auction houses, gallery practitioners are also collectors themselves. So it becomes problematic because if you collect a piece, right, you did not let the public know, and you kind of keep building reputation for the piece, what happens is what you collect will also inflate in value. It's touching on a very dark side of the art industry. I hope I'm not trying, you don't feel like, oh, this woman is talking nonsense, because I look at it every day. But yeah, so these are them. And then we have the sponsors and the corporates. Can you name a couple of sponsors or corporates that support the art, or like traditionally? UBS recently supported. UBS is a key sponsor for Art Basel this year, yes. So all my media friends were like, oh, we don't have time for your media lunch because UBS are holding a lot of media lunches and they offer better food. I was like, I do not have as much budget. So a lot of times whether you get media coverage is also about how much you can pay for lunch and how good the lunch you offer is, unfortunately. So there's UBS and what else? Swire. Swire doesn't only offer money. What does Swire offer in addition?
Sometimes exhibition space.
Space, because space is something extremely important in Hong Kong and extremely lacking in Hong Kong. And a lot of times, in addition to Swire, you have Hong Kong Land. Hong Kong Land is basically the owner of Central. But the tricky thing is Hong Kong Land owns a lot of central public places. Meaning that, you know the bit outside Exchange Square and IFC? You can always sit there and have lunch, right? Or you can do stuff there. But technically, it's not public land because it's land under Hong Kong Land. So what happens recently is, you know Event Horizon by Anthony Gomley? So Anthony Gomley is a internationally renowned sculptor. Internationally renowned sculptor. And he made a lot of sculptures based on his own figure. So you see a lot of like those people in Central. So Hong Kong Land used to be the key sponsor until someone jumped off a building in Central. And that building was originally a site for one of these figures. So what happened was after someone jumped off, there was huge public opinion saying that you shouldn't put a figure up there because it reminds people of people jumping off. Personally, I agree because it's grievances, right? If you really care about the society and about grief, art is kind of not as important or more important. But whatever the narrative is, Hong Kong Land decided not to fund it. So then you think, okay, if Hong Kong Land has such commitment to the art, if it really cares that much, why is it going to pull, even if it's against public opinion? Then it gets you to think, what does sponsors actually want from sponsoring art event?
Corporate image.
Yes, it's very much a branding thing. And again, the academia, unfortunately or unknowingly, helped this a lot. Because what does the academia always say? Art is really important to culture. Culture is really important to how a society develops, how it matures. Hong Kong is a cultural desert, we need more art, right? It's a very familiar narrative. So sponsors will be like, awesome. My PR release will be like, Hong Kong Land sponsors the art in order to facilitate public interest. We want to educate the young mind. We want something. I can just create it off the top of my head. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm saying that a lot of times we accept this without questioning. We stop questioning whether or not the city needs art like this. Because you know, in a city where you have a lot of space, these statues look really nice. And they kind of give people a sense of presence. Because those places, you only have space, right? But unfortunately in Hong Kong, we have the opposite. We have no space. And if you put, one of them has been complained really hard by the public and they had to be taken away by the government. So 路政署有一日封咗條路啦，because they decided that these are road blockage. So they put a sign there saying that this is road blockage, we're going to take it away, until they later found out that this is supported by the Hong Kong government. So they had to quickly remove whatever the blockage sign, right? So that tells you something, because a lot of times I walk in Central a lot and I always walk into that statue head on. Yeah. Because like you'll be looking at the phone and then the whole thing just blocked the road and you'll be like, boom, right? So then you think, hey, public art, first of all, why is public art necessarily good? And second of all, is this the right piece of public art if I bump into it every day and hurt myself? And there are very interesting debates surrounding this, because Bernard Chen, like one of our executive, I think it's executive council, right, member, he wrote a letter saying that Hong Kong people, he kind of was saying that Hong Kong people are uncultured because they do not know how to appreciate this kind of art. But wait a second, like who are you to say that my opinion doesn't matter when it comes to hurting myself every single day, right? So of course you can debate whether or not this is culture, whether it's a problem of education, whether or not we are missing something by missing art. But this has to be through debate or not through discussion. It's not automatically saying that public art is good for us. Because if you do that, sponsors will be really happy. And you know what? Most of the times when I write sponsor release, they kind of do not care what goes in there. They care that their logo is on every single coverage. So if I have a huge coverage on Anthony Gombi, without mentioning Hong Kong Land, and I'm the PR of this project, I'm dead. And then I'll get a call from Hong Kong Land, hi, we are the sponsor of the project. Why didn't you make sure our name is in the news? I'll say, because the journalist doesn't think that it's important. But it's your job to make sure they do report on us. So I'll be calling the journalist, hi friend, I'm very sorry, I know I shouldn't say this to you, but Hong Kong Land wants their name to be back on this. Can you please put them in somehow, put them in like an info box or something. I'm not saying, this is not my project. Event Horizon is not my project, but this is exactly what is going to happen in any sponsored event, right? So, because in branding, this is corporate expenditure, and they kind of care what corporate expenditure generates for them. Okay, and then let's go to the NGOs, who are supposedly the angels of the world, the angels on the scene, right? Because they fund art with their own money. Where do you think? Okay. Where, first of all, how do NGO look for funding?
Through governments, like, for example, through HKADC or through Create Hong Kong.
Yeah.
For like one-time projects or permanent projects.
Create Hong Kong. So Create Hong Kong is something, it basically encourages startup. So Create Hong Kong will be closer to startup culture. HKADC is your usual government funding. We joke a lot with our artist friend. Basically, they're saying that those who know how to make good art may not necessarily get the ADC funding. You need to also be a really good writer. You have to be really persistent with annoying forms and administrative procedure and waiting for 1 year before you actually get the funding. So you see the relationship between good art, good artist, and good writer or good storyteller is very intricate. You kind of have to be all. And then you start asking, wait, what if I'm just an artist who wants to create art? I don't care about all the other administrative stuff. And that's how like galleries and other agents come out, because they kind of make sure the artists do not have to take care of those things, right? Okay, what else? If I do not want to ask the government, there is at least 2 ways.
Charity fund.
Yeah, but they're already a charity. Does their fund come from?
Corporate.
Okay, they can talk to corporates.
Public donation and private patrons.
A lot of these people have other businesses. So they can't fund an NGO without having other businesses. So common other interests, other businesses to have is real estate. A very obvious example would be K11. You all know the K11 mall, right? So K11 is started by Adrian Chan, who is also the chairman of New World Development. And if you know how much money New World Development makes every year, you wouldn't be surprised why K11 can run in so many cities. K11 is not only in Hong Kong, they are also in Shanghai. They have an artist village in Wuhan. They're kind of all over China, and they bring artists to Palais de Tokyo, like in France, and then they have a lot of collaborations with Chinese artists. Again, I'm not saying that this is wrong, but you also have to aware that these so-called NGOs are not NGO completely by nature, right? So what if, now Asia Art Archive is an NGO that is not backed, as far as I know, by other businesses, but they do charity auctions. So they are collectors themselves, they do charity auctions. So very easily, you can see it's the same problem with the museums, because you have to buy into the commercial system in order to fund your NGO system, right? So it's never two things that is entirely different. And one more practice that is getting more and more prominent in the scene is that a collector simultaneously have a commercial space and an NGO. So what happens is, if a commercial space tells you that certain art is good, you will always be skeptical because it's commercial, right? But if an NGO tells you that it's good, it's for public good, it's for fun, you tend to be more acceptive to it. So what happens is, they use the NGO they own to drive the popularity. And eventually this will drive what they are collecting. It sounds ridiculous. It sounds like, 一級陰謀論啦。I wasn't a believer of it, but until I was keep working on these projects, right? And if you think about the money flow, it kind of is like that. I'm really not trying to comment on whether or not it's good or it's bad. My main problem is with the narrative, which I'll get into in the media. Okay, so you have NGOs, you have insurance. Insurance is kind of neutral. What else? Boom, you have 6. Okay. Are you aware of the fact that the sun, like 太陽報, just closed down? Right? We have, the media is in a situation worse than ever in history, especially for print media. There are rumors that a really big lifestyle magazine, which I should not reveal, but every one of you will know it, it's kind of really big, is going to close down sometime. And if that closes down, I'm not sure what is actually making money. So a lot of newspaper nowadays, bigger news, except for maybe Apple Daily and Oriental Daily, those two are definitely still making money. But a lot of the rest are losing money. Media are running on a loss of money because media owners a lot of times also own other businesses, they can subsidize it, or it's kind of more for, a lot of them are bought up by huge funding bodies because the media is a way to control communication, right? So I don't want to go into that, but that's the situation of the media. So what happens is, there are not a lot of cultural journalists in Hong Kong, and if there are, unfortunately they work like crazy because one of them would have to handle all the cultural news within a paper. So they never leave their desk, all they have to do is like boom, 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 they keep doing it, right? So that's why there's PRs like us. What we do is, we collect stories from our clients, we try to pitch it to the media, telling them that, hey, this may be an interesting story. If you don't have time to go out and do research, maybe you should trust me. Again, I'm not a bad person. I can get really good projects, which I truly believe, and tell it. But anything I say in a working context will have to be biased. Because I can't go out and say what I just said to you to the media. I can't say that, hey, there may be collusion, maybe you should look at it. I'm gonna get fired right away, right? So anything that comes from me has to be something good about the exhibition, which again, by nature, is nothing wrong. But the journalists have to be really aware that I'm trying to hide something, consciously or unconsciously. But since the journalists are so busy, very, very few of them actually have time to go through the cycle, the thinking cycle we just thought about. The cultural news that comes out becomes very controlled. It becomes a lot of times that, Swire is funding public art, etc., etc. It becomes very factual. You will always know that, then I can go to Swire and look at public art. But you can't have a lot of discussion on what public art is, or what that thing, or discussion on whether or not you need it. So just a tiny bit into PR and marketing, the reason why people employ PR is because if you place, for instance, if you have 100,000 of advertisement budget, right? You put it into advertisement, Apple Daily front page. If you want to buy, like Cartier, buy Apple Daily front page for advertisement, it's $100,000 for one day. So you would have burned that money out one go, right? But if you employ a PR, all I have to do is to understand why your story is interesting, and I try to explain it to the media so that they do editorial coverage. Editorial coverage is not bought, it's because they think it's interesting. So my job is to tell an interesting story so that someone covers it. And to employ me is a lot cheaper than $100,000. I wish I had that money, but I do not. So it's a lot cheaper and you get a lot more coverage. That is why, right? But then again, if you think about the nuance, it affects how neutral the media is. And it affects how they cover the art. It kind of always has to be positive. So back to the question I asked in the beginning of the class. A lot of you say that it has to challenge social status, it has to be provocative. It's always true to a certain extent until the art does not sell. Because if it doesn't sell, do you think like these people are not going to employ a PR to tell a story that will cause their art to not sell? These people are also not going to fund some kind of provocative art that will not eventually generate some sort of money, simply because all the things we just talked about. So if we think that provocative art is good art, that is exactly why they exist. It's not because they're provocative. It's because we think that provocative art is good art and it can stabilize the system, which is a very sad thing, because if you think of how contemporary art first started out, it's very avant-garde, it's very provocative. But nowadays, because of the system, even Banksy, like Banksy was really, you guys know Banksy? Banksy is this artist who changes art pieces in museums in the US, pretending that his works are museum works, and people can't tell, right? This is a very strong sign of strong challenge to the institution until he tries to make money out of it. Because then you are basically trying to challenge the institution in order to earn money, right? It becomes a really commercial thing. And the only reason why he can continue to do it is because people buy into that idea. So you see that whenever you have to make use of art to make money, I'm not saying it's bad. From the beginning to the end, I don't think anything is bad. My problem is with the narrative. It's how you talk about it. It's whether or not you can be honest with what is happening in the industry. A lot of it has to do with the mechanism I just talked about. And not a lot of people would expose it. Not a lot of people want to think that public art is not necessarily good. Not a lot of people would want to think that I might be putting money simply for branding. Like none of these. And in fact, you would like to think that big corporations fund artists the best, which is not the case. Recently, we have a really big, like million-earning corporations who held an art show in their public area without paying the artist any money. And we, as an agent in between, were trying to pull together people who would not charge their money and display their work. So, and the biggest, the most common excuse from them would be like, oh, you get reputation, you get known. But the problem is, if you get known and eventually you don't get paid, I'm not sure how useful it is to the artist, right? So that would be very close to the end of my presentation, and I just want to I hope I have make everyone aware of the things that are behind the narratives, that how we look at art. Again, it's not a problem of whether or not it's good or bad. It's being aware of this and then rethink it. If after rethinking it, you still think that, oh, this and this and this are true to me about good art, it's great, it's your opinion. But because too many people are trying to affect how you think about art, and of course about a lot of other things, it's better to be a bit more skeptical about that. Yeah? So that's the end of my presentation. Do you want me to talk about Saturday as well?
Oh yeah.
Saturday, what time again? 10?
Let's see. 10 a.m.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Saturday we are going to have an outing. I think I will try my best to align all of these places, so we will go to one each. We can go to one auction house, one gallery, one non-profit. Basically, if you stay with me in Central, you'll find all of them, so don't worry. Unless you want to go with me to Chunwan, which is also, you can kind of also go to see some places there. But otherwise, we will see. And we are fortunate because of Art Basel. All the art shows open in the past 2 weeks. And if you are an art lover, disregarding what I just said, it's going to be very, very good shows. Personally, I do think so. So we will wait at 10 o'clock. Where's a good place to wait in Central?
Let's meet at the Anthony Gomez sculpture.
You sure everyone will find it though?
It's right at the junction of Theatre Lane, Hay Yuen Lane, and Queen's Road. It's a very public space. It's just outside exit D2. I think we.
So outside Gap, right?
Yeah.
So you know Gap, the huge Gap in Central? Let's wait. So 10 a.m. outside Gap. Outside Gap. That's D2
Exit, yeah.
Central.
Right. Yeah, I will send an email to you guys.
Awesome.
If you like to come to the field trip, you can stay and tell me your name after class. And right now, if you have any questions,
discussions,
feel free to ask Mona.
Yes.
Is it open for public? I mean, field trip?
No, it's
Only for Hong Kong.
Yeah. Are you from public?
I'm a student from HK University.
Yeah.
Oh.
All the
Stay behind.
shows are open to public. All the shows you can walk in. But if you want to walk in together and maybe have a discussion on the way, you're free to join the show. Otherwise, leave me your email. I can email you all the show details of what's going on in Central. You can go in your own time. If you do not go to Central, another good district to be in is Wangzhouhang. because Guangzhou is becoming like an not fringe, but it's a different kind of gallery, right? So you have Guangzhou, you also have Taiwan. Taiwan, you have a lot of factory galleries. If you go to Guntong, you have a lot of workshops there. So depending on what kind, I mean, assuming that everyone sitting here is interested in art and cultural activities in certain ways. Since I work really closely at work and outside work, I do have side projects in touch with drama and more on the performative side. So if you want, leave me your email or like add me on Facebook or whatever, we can have a chat about things. Yeah, and if you have more questions now concerning what I just said, then you're very welcome to ask.
I would kind of say, perhaps that makes art education important to everyone, I think. Because as we mentioned before, a lot of people tend to believe what other people say about art. But of course, that's also what we do in fine art education in Hong Kong view. But that at least educates you to respond to the art piece yourself. Because our starting point is visual stuff instead of textual or other people's comments. So that kind of enables us to.
But the thing is, how will you look at art if it's not through other people's comment? Like even if history is also written by people.
Yeah, indeed. But you would always start from the visual, what you see, what you directly see yourself instead of what you read. But I mean, what you read is important, but your starting point should be visual.
I think that is really important because art is very much a sensory thing. And if you start from theories, personally, I think it's the same as learning piano, right? If you do the exams, if you like take in a lot of theories, that kind of doesn't get you anywhere. I think it's genuine interest, coupled with art education. To me, is more critical thinking. Like critical thinking meaning that, first of all, accepting that art is not, it doesn't have a halo. You can still like it, you can still love it. It's okay to like something without a halo. It's okay to like something that's not saved, as long as you like it, right? But too many people want to like art because it has a halo. That's the first thing. And second, if it doesn't have a halo, it's like everything else on earth. It has its limitation, it has its mechanism. It doesn't affect the fact that it's still beautiful, it still touches you. So if we kind of can look beyond these things, I think it's a lot healthier for art in general and like art education in general. Because a lot of times people go into art classes, even my classes, they will expect me to tell them about art history and stuff, which I can, and I do some of them. But then those things to me are not the crux of art education. That's why I do not go into it. Because if you can if you can kind of be more reflexive, there are enough internet stuff, there are enough library, they're like much better than what I can ever say, right? So to me, the crux is really discussion and stuff. And I do not teach full time. I'm not a professional teacher, so that's okay for me. Anything else?
So, so what's your ideal Plato? What's your ideal art world?
My ideal art world.
Yeah. Well, you can say. Oh, are you happy with the current situation with the art scene and art industry? If not, I think what's your ideal case? What's the ideal case of people working in the art industry? What's the relationship? What's the role? Or what does it look like in your ideal world?
I have my blind spot because it's very hard for me to look at art creation without thinking of these things anymore, which is, it takes away the joy. Because I'll look at an NGO which shows really cool art, and I'll be like, wait, but there's money laundering behind. So it actually is really sad. Like if you're really interested in, maybe don't go into the industry. I think a more ideal way to do it will be if people are more honest. If people do not try to wrap up things. It's basically a story wrapped up in 10,000 other stories. I think it's very unnecessary. It shows how people are not willing to face the reality, which is reality is sometimes things are not as pure as they want to look like, which is okay. Like why do people think that this stuff have to be really pure? That would be a more ideal place. And in terms of my relationship with art, I don't draw, but I play a bit of music. The happiest thing to do with music is really to play maybe after work or whenever you are interested, whenever it actually interests you. I think interest comes really important in anything, especially in art. Yeah. So my answer, maybe I'll just quit my job.
And you did, right?
I kind
you
of.
did.
Yeah, this is another story. We can just go talk about it right now. Or maybe I can leave you my email so that if you have any more questions or stuff, you can always email me. It's hold on.
Don't worry, I will email you guys.
Yeah, or you can like include my email in the email. Okay, if there's no other things, then thank you so much for coming, and I hope I did not bore you. I hope these things are kind of inspiring in certain ways. And feel free to give me feedbacks.
Can you introduce a bit about Satoshi?
Yes, that is super important.
Yeah.
So Satoshi is a project that I will next work as Brian so kindly mentioned, I've quit my current job. And I will be trying something else with the art industry and other things. So Satoshi is a festival in Japan, and it's currently, I think, the largest or second largest outdoor art festival. If you would pardon me with a bit more history, it started, not Satoshi, but another festival that called Ejigosumari. It's called Daidengashijai. Daidengashijai happened the year before, and it is currently the largest outdoor art festival. And it happened because in Japan, aging was a huge problem, right? So because of aging, because of the economy downturn, a lot of village people moved to the city to look for jobs. And villages were aging really badly, they were dilapidated. But the problem is not that they are poor. They were never super poor. The problem is city people looking at them and stigmatizing them. It's like, oh, those poor people, those are barbaric people, the poverty people, right? So this guy called Frank Kitagawa, he started a festival 20 years ago. He was thinking, art, if it stays in auction houses and galleries, is kind of useless. So I'm going to try to bridge people with it. And he tries to introduce artists to that dilapidated area, good artists, I mean big name artists, asking them to create stuff so that it draws people in. But then a very tricky point is, if I impose Mona Lisa in front of your rice field or your house, village house, you'll be like, God, this thing has nothing to do with me. It's just you showing off your knowledge, right? So the way he does it is he invites the artist to go and try to create something that's specific to those places. And he doesn't tell you how. So unfortunately, if you doesn't speak Japanese, you will just have to go talk to people in whatever way. When Brian and I were volunteers at Satoshi in its first edition. And what we did was we went around with a paper and pen and drawing to like those old people, telling them that we wanted to start a cafe there. And it was extremely painful. We had no support. It was for 6 weeks. It was pretty painful. But you kind of really build a connection with those people. And you're not going in as if you were trying to save the place. Art is kind of just an excuse or something that tricked us into going in and doing whatever we had to do. So the way they run it, not Satoshi, I'm still talking about Ejigosumari. The way they run it is they do not give a lot of emphasis to the artists. They do not make the artists, it's not like they're heroes. It's more like they somehow got tricked into this and created that. It's a very, very long story, so if you want to hear more about Ejigosumari, email me or we can get in touch, get a coffee or something. So Satoshi is kind of a sister festival of Ejigosumari. It's slightly more complicated because it's not only funded by the crazy guy from Kitagawa just now, it's also funded by certain corporates. So you would see that the model of development is a bit different. And also Naoshima. So Satoshi is a sea in Japan. And surrounding that sea, there are different islands. I think 10 or something this year.
Yeah.
So on different islands, they start different art projects. And fortunately enough, a teacher in Hong Kong started bringing students to these places to be volunteers every year, starting from I think 15 years ago, from Ejigosumari. This is only 6 years. Satoshi is only 6 years. Ejigosumari has been, I think, around 20 years already. So anyway, for the past decade or so, the Hong Kong volunteer team has a very good relationship with the Japan side. Satoshi and Ejigosumari is only 2 of them. They should have 3 to 4 more. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to organize students to go every year. Because in our year, we were very lucky we had sponsors to sponsor us. But this year, I don't think there will be as much sponsorship But even so, a lot of people are interested to see how it is, and it's very hard to go on your own because of language barrier, because of a lot of things. So tentatively, the tour for HKU students and other, we now have APA, we now have HKU, we have BU, who will send students there. The tentative tour is we start from 4th of July and end 22nd of July. Those periods will be hard work, going around and talking to Japanese old women, and we will include 2 to 3 days of boat tours, depending on the number of people we get. This is a very attractive point, or we're trying to make it very easy for everyone, because think about it, if you have 14 different islands, they only have a fixed amount of ship, and the problem is during the first edition there were 500,000 people on those islands during the festival. It's like Mongkok. So if you were going to fight everyone in Mongkok to get on a boat, you will not see any art. What we're trying to do is we get enough student volunteers to work, and then at the end of the work we'll book a boat so that we can just like go wherever we want, right? That's depending on if we get enough people to go. And also we are planning a second tail of the trip, which is we also go to Agreeable, which is close to Niigata, Sunset, So we have like farming projects there. There are also a lot of good museums on the way. So we will try to cut costs as much as possible. Budgeting is such a headache, but to make it easy for students to attend. I think it's a very good experience. When we worked on that, it was hard work. We kind of swore at it a lot, but looking back now, it's a very new way to operate the cultural industry if you're interested, and to respond to his question just now, how is it's more ideal way to do it. There will be an information session, so please leave your email with Brian so that I can inform everyone through Brian. It will probably be on the 21st or 2nd of April, somewhere at HKU, right? There will be some selection process, which I'm not sure yet, and then we will organize kind of everything for you. So hopefully I'll see some of you there as my first project after quitting my job. Yeah. So that is SOT, yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about the company that you worked for? Like, does it specialize in promoting arts and culture? Oh yeah.
So there are a couple of PR companies that specializes in that. If you're interested, go look at Sutton. Sutton is not the company I work for, but Sutton is the biggest art specialized PR company probably in the world. It has a branch in Hong Kong. Sutton PR. But I have to warn you, if you want to work for Sutton, it's a really crazy, busy, tiring job. But if you look up Sutton, you would be able to find some other PR firms. Are you interested in the area?
I'm just curious.
No, yeah. But then, if
I'm
you
just curious how the mechanism works.
Yeah. Okay. Our company is smaller. It's boutique, and it also focuses on art and culture. I have to say the quality of publicity and writing is very high, because my bosses they are really true art lovers, and they are really crazy about good writing, which makes my life really hard. But yeah, if you're interested in art PR or the art industry, just email me. I'm very happy to send you somewhere. Yeah. So that's it for today.
Thanks. Thanks, Mona.
No problem. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, let me take a few more minutes. Last week we went to Yau Ma Tei. Some of us went with us, with Mei Ping, with the speaker last week. I think that idea, we went to the local community, and then we visited some of the places. Some of them are not opened yet, but we visited some of the market. An artist rents a place in the marketplace, and then every day the artist just went there and opened a store next to the market, and this is art, and this is art pieces. And I think somehow these festivals somehow kind of are in the same line with the thing that the Hong Kong artist is doing in Yau Ma Tei, and sort of a large scale, sort of a different scale, sort of a different landscape. But I think generally we see the trend of making art. It's no longer these are the current contemporary model. But I think sort of we will see a different trend that would change all that. into a different scene, change all that different scene, and you see. So we see the case in Yau Ma Tei and the rest of Hong Kong, and also we see these Japanese festival. I think they are some of the coming trend.
Just to jump in a bit, actually, it started in the 80s. The whole rethinking process started in the 80s. And the 80s is when people started to question the idea of museum. It's the same question I asked just now. It's like, why are curators deciding what is art for us, number one? And why do art have to be put into this cold building, a white cube, and then be displayed that way? So agreeable is kind of a response to reopening art. And one of the earlier projects is to create a library outdoors. If you think about it, library traditionally is a public institution that is always indoors and quite contained. And now they're kind of opening it to the public. And it talks about nature, it talks about the relationship, it talks about whether or not art or museums have to be permanent. Because a lot of times we think that unless it's permanent, it doesn't worth anything. But a lot of Brian, do you have House of Shidoshima?
Oh.
House of Shidoshima was the project that we worked on back in 2010. It is. I'm not sure we have good pictures. Oh,
Yeah.
they do.
We do.
This thing we built it from scratch. So it's a 3-story high art piece, and then there were a couple of us and an artist team trying to pack tie every day. So we were like trying to break bamboos every day. We were climbing up and down like monkeys to complete this. It was extremely tiring, especially as a girl. But this is what they're trying to do in the middle of the field. And the trick to this artwork is never publicized, because if you publish it, it's not going to work. But the thing is, this thing is in the middle of 2 villages, which traditionally do not like each other. They were trying to fight for water. The funny thing is they never have lacked water. They always had enough water, but somehow the villagers managed to think that they are running out of water. And they were fighting with each other for years and years and years on. And so the artist somehow found out this story, and he created this thing without telling anybody the intention. But we know because we kind of worked with him, right? So after creating this thing, there's a platform inside, and you can chill inside. It's really comfortable to just lie down and look at the sun, like the light coming down. Yeah, like that. Oh, that was us. So like you can hold music, concerts. So the people unknowingly come together, and they had to talk to each other, and that already finishes the social community part of the project. But again, you do not PR it, you do not publicize it. It's just something that you learn through doing, and it's a trick that another art piece tried to create. So there were 2 religions, and the 2 religions didn't like each other. She created an ice cream stand in the middle of that. So in order to get the ice cream, you somehow have to mingle with people of normally a really hostile opposition. So all these things, I mean, if you had that experience making, it's very easy for you to pick it up. But otherwise, you don't see that in publicity. Even for Satoshi official publicity, they don't say that they are helping the community. It's all about, we have good udon and we have good food and good rice in this area. But having done it, you kind of know that it's really not the crux of things.
One more thing, let me add. The Turner Prize 2015, you guys would all know, some of you may know. The winner is a team of architects. The winner is not any artist who make any sculpture or installation art or any painting, but the winner is a team of architects, and the piece is not really a piece, but it's a project by helping a local community in Britain, a local poor region in Britain, and these young people, they help local community to set up business. They repair their homes, they repair their plumbing. So I think we with this case, Turner Prize winner assemble, and also the Yau Ma Tei, and also the Hong Kong Yau Ma Tei arts culture with Fatang, and then also with the Japanese thing, we sort of see the trend. It's going on. It's changing. The art scene is changing in the world, and I hope you get this message. And let's get back to business. Okay, so this Saturday we have a field trip with Mona, and I think Mi Ping will be coming with us as well. and we were going with Central. This is a meeting place. I would email you. Okay, if you wanna join us, please stay and tell me your email, and because we have to keep it in a small size. I think about 15 to 20 at maximum, because it will be a very crowded street. And also upcoming we have Satoshi Art. We were gonna have in April we have a talk about art space, about running art space from Alex and also Mona again.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so this is the recruitment talk. We are going to recruit Hong Kong youth students to the festival I was just mentioning. By the time I come next time with the recruitment talk, I should have all the details in terms of time and in terms of budget breakdown and a lot of other things. So expect it to be late April, like close to the 21st, 22nd of April. I might come with my team, and then I'll do it through Byron. So then just keep an eye on all the emails he sent.
And by GE. And here we go, and we got some more activities. But okay, thanks Mona again for coming. And feel free to ask questions, stay behind, ask questions, and these are some of the upcoming activities by GE.
Please support that department. They're like working super hard on stuff.